Okay, today we again get back to reading comprehension. The theme that we are discussing today, right? That is the theme on the basis of which we are discussing reading comprehension passages today is psychology, right? That is the theme for today's session. So what we'll do is we'll do some passages that are based on the overall theme of psychology. We'll start with simpler passages and then we'll move on to slightly more complicated passages. And so we'll do a few passages based on the theme of psychology. Towards the end, we'll discuss one concept of grammar that we are still left with. And but primarily this session is focused towards discussing passages that are based on the theme of psychology. And then towards the end, we discuss one particular aspect of grammar that we are still left with. Otherwise, I guess all the major concepts of grammar we are done with. Right? In the last class, if I'm not wrong, we had discussed parallelism and punctuation. Right? So most of the major concepts we're done with. There's just one major concept that we're left with, which we will discuss towards the end of this class. But let's start with passages on psychology, right? On the overall theme of psychology. As I said, we'll start with a simple passage first, and then we'll come to some of the more slightly complicated passages. I've sent the sheet on the WhatsApp group. This is the sheet. The sheet is VA27 RC9, right? Okay. In this sheet, I want you to try the third passage first. Right? I'll open it on the screen here as well. This is the third passage. Right? This is the third passage. Try this passage. It's a comparatively short passage. It's an easy to understand passage. The questions are not very difficult. Right? Please try this passage. It's followed by three questions, 25, 26, 27. And please try this passage. Once you are done, just type in your answers. Take 2 to 3 minutes more. We'll then discuss the answers. Ritika, correct. 25, 26, correct. Ritika. Anubi, all three correct. Good. Ritika, the third one is also correct. Good. Steffi, all three questions correct? Good. Okay, let's discuss this. Question 25 says, how do kids belonging to affluent backgrounds hold an advantage over kids from impoverished backgrounds? The answer is option 1. Kids who belong to rich backgrounds are exposed to more words per hour, and this provides an advantage early on in life. Right? More words per hour is something that's there in the first half of the passage. Right? 1500 more spoken words per hour. Right? And it says it explains an achievement gap that starts young and is stubbornly persistent. Right? So it's persistent. Right? So those who have that advantage, they get that advantage early on in life. The other options are not appropriate. With reference to the difference between kids from affluent and impoverished backgrounds, it is option 1 that is the answer. Question 2, what is the major critique against a program like Head Start? The answer is option 2. That too much academic pressure on children can have an adverse effect. Please make a note. Can have an adverse effect on childhood and stun essential areas of psychic development. Right? This is essentially what the second half of the passage is talking about. Right? It says many Head Start programs have been designed to better prepare kids. However, some educators wonder if too much academic pressure on children could be crowding out play. Right? So could have an adverse effect on childhood and stunt. Okay, please make a note. This word should be stunt. Right? Stunt essential areas of psychic development, not stun, stunt. Stunt means to obstruct the growth of. Right? To obstruct the growth of. Age of 6 is not discussed. Well-staffed is not discussed. Elitist is not discussed. And question 27, how does the imbalance in school time and playtime help in creating anxiety? The answer is option 1. Too much academics can squash child-led inquiry and imagination. Right? Child-led inquiry and imagination is there in the last paragraph. Right? Which should be protected for child-led inquiry and imagination, and too soon can squash a childhood. Right? So this is where we are getting option 1 from, which would result in distortion in childhood and generate psychological disorders from a young age. So which are those psychological disorders? Where it talks about externality, anxiety, depression, etc. Right? Those are the psychological disorders. Right? So here the answer is option 1. On the whole, this was a simple passage. Right? Why I'm saying simple passage is because it was easy to understand. Right? The language was not very dense. The content was not very dense. Right? Quite a bit of it was factual in nature. The questions did not have close answer options. Most of the questions had direct answers. Right? You could find the answers mentioned in the passage. So on the whole, an easy passage. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most difficult, I would call this 2 out of 5. And 5 being the most difficult. Yes, in the exam, right? In the exam, that is when I talk about CAT, right? You can definitely expect something that is much more difficult than this one that we have just done. And especially in an exam like CAT or maybe in an exam like ZAT. Now let's do a passage that is more complicated than the one that we have done. Right? More complicated from an understanding perspective, also more complicated from the perspective of the questions. Right? Try the next passage, passage 4. The next passage. This is more complicated than the one that we have done. The last passage, questions 28 to 30, passage 5. The one on the screen. I'm sorry, passage 4, not passage 5, passage 4. Ritika, 28th is correct. Steffi, the 30th question is correct. 28, 29 are different answers. 30th is correct. Ritika, 29th is a different answer. Steffi, 28th is correct. 29th is a different answer. 28th is correct. Anubi, 28th is correct. 29th is a different answer. Sambhav, 28 and 29 are correct. 30th is a different answer. The first two are correct, Sambhav. Ritika, 29th is correct. Take a minute or two more, we'll then discuss. Anubi, 29th is a different answer. Sambhav, 30th is correct. Good. All three correct. Anubi, different answer for the 30th one. Okay, let's discuss. Right, let's come to the questions. Question 28. Question 28 says, the core deficit of psychopaths affects their long-term success because, right? So it talks about the core deficit of psychopaths affecting their long-term success. So to answer this question, first of all, I have to know what the core deficit is. In the passage, it says that the core deficit is indifference towards the suffering of other people, and they lack compassion. So what is the core deficit? The core deficit is compassion, which is why here the answer is option 3. They cannot hide their lack of compassion for long. That is how it affects their long-term success. So maybe in the short term, they can hide their lack of compassion, but in the long term, they cannot hide their lack of compassion. That is how it affects their success. This question was specifically about core deficit, and the core deficit is lack of compassion. So the correct answer had to include the term compassion, right? Which is why the answer is option 3. Option 1 says they cannot sustain the behavior. Please be very careful whenever you have vague answer options. It says they cannot sustain the behavior. Which behavior? This option does not make that clear, right? Which is why we do not go with option 1, right? We do not go with option 1. So if option 1 is referring to displaying compassion, then maybe option 1 makes sense, right? But option 1 right now is very vague. Option 2 says they're less likely to succeed as HR managers than as finance managers. This could be true in case of psychopaths, but it does not answer the question, right? This may apply to psychopaths, but it does not answer the question, right? Option 4 says empathy is essential for long-term success. With reference to core deficit, it is not empathy, it is compassion. And in fact, in that paragraph, the author has already made it clear that there is a distinction between empathy and compassion. Right? It's important to distinguish it from empathy. So I cannot choose an answer option that talks about empathy. Option 5 says natural selection enables moral feelings. Right? Fair enough. This may be correct. Right? Option 5 may be correct as per what is given in the first paragraph. It does not answer the question. Right? So the answer is option 3. Question 29 is a good question because I would say that the answer is not something that has been given directly in the passage. The question says, which of the following options is correct according to the author? Right? Let's try to eliminate options, then let's see what we are left with. Option 2 is wrong. Option 2 says empathy is a chance event. Right? If you have a look at this paragraph, it says that I am too much of an adaptationist to think that something like empathy exists as a freak biological accident. It most likely has a function. So empathy does not exist by accident. It has a function, right? So the author will not agree that empathy is a chance event. Chance is something that happens by accident, right? Or accident is something that happens by chance, right? So option 2, the author will completely disagree with. Option 3, empathy is the cause of moral choice. Please note, even this the author will disagree with. Just look at this last paragraph. It says empathy may be the product of moral choice, product, not the cause of it. Right? So empathy is not the cause of moral choice. Right? So option 3 again completely contradicts. Option 4, 100% wrong. Caring for others is psychopathy. In fact, in psychopaths, there is a lack of the emotion of caring for others. Right? They lack compassion. So option 4 contradicts the entire passage. Option 5 says long-term success in business is a freak accident. Option 5 is not from the perspective of psychopaths. So maybe in the context of psychopaths, it's a freak accident, right? But it cannot be generalized that for everybody, long-term success in business is a freak accident. So options 2, 3, 4, and 5 are definitely not the answers. The answer is option 1. Compassion exists for a reason. Now, this answer is given very indirectly in the first paragraph. Compassion exists for a reason. Right? Look at the first paragraph. In the first paragraph, it says, our moral feelings evolved through natural selection. So where did our moral feelings come from? They came from natural selection. Right? So moral feelings have originated from natural selection. So it is because of natural selection that we have moral feelings. And somewhere later on, 2 or 3 sentences later, what they have done is they have related the concept of moral sentiments, that is moral feelings, to the lack of regard. And lack of regard for others later on in the passage has been defined as compassion. Right? I think on the next slide. Right? Compassion is indifference towards the suffering of other people. So lack of regard is compassion, and compassion, they are saying, is a kind of moral sentiment. So if moral sentiment comes through natural selection, that means compassion also comes through natural selection. Right? So if compassion is because of natural selection, then I can definitely say that compassion exists for a reason. And what is that reason? That reason is natural selection. So option 1 is a very, very indirect answer, right? But option 1 is correct. The other options are definitely not correct. So this question, the best way of solving it would have been to go by elimination of answer options. The other answer options can very clearly be eliminated. Right? Option 1 can be justified. Yes, it is kind of far-fetched, but it definitely can be inferred. Right? There is no doubt. It definitely is an inference. Right? So if it's an inference, it's correct according to the author. Right? But on the whole, a difficult question. Whereas the previous question, right, this was kind of an easy question. Question 28 was an easy question. 29 was difficult. Question 30 is somewhere in between. In question 30, what has happened is they have given a real life situation. A student approaches a faculty pleading to increase his marks because failure in one more subject will result in the student having to leave the program. So the student is facing a problem, right? There's a real problem that the student is facing. The faculty says, I am sorry, but I cannot change your grades as it would be unfair to others. Please note, when the faculty says, I am sorry, it means that the faculty is empathizing with that person. Right? The faculty is empathizing with that person. Only then will the faculty say, I am sorry, because the faculty can imagine what that person is feeling. So the faculty is maybe able to put himself or herself into the shoes of that person and imagine what that person is feeling. But the faculty says, I cannot change your grade. So when the faculty says, I cannot change your grades, the faculty is not willing to take an action, right? No action to address the situation. So yes, the emotion is there, right? The emotion is there, but the faculty is not willing to take an action. That means that there is no compassion. Compassion, you will see that towards the end of the passage, has directly been linked to action. Look at the last paragraph here. If a child has been frightened by a barking dog and is howling in terror, my sympathetic response is not to howl in terror, but to comfort and protect her. So when I comfort and protect her, I am undertaking some action, right? That means compassion is there, right? Compassion is there. Then again, it gives another example. You can have compassion without empathy, right? You can have compassion without empathy. Similarly, you can have empathy without compassion. And just look at the example that has been given for without compassion. In without compassion, you will notice that even otherwise good people sometimes turn away. So they do not undertake a necessary action, right? They distance themselves from the person. So they do not take a necessary action. So the teacher is not willing to take a necessary action. So compassion is not there. The empathy is there, right? The answer is option 4. This is an application-based question, right? You understand the concepts that have been given in the passage and you apply them to a real-life situation, right? This is a very good example of an application-based question. If the understanding of the concepts is absolutely proper, right, then this question is easy to attempt, right? It's easy to attempt this question. So on the whole, this passage, I would say, was neither too easy nor too difficult, right? For me, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being the most difficult, this passage, when I say passage, including the questions, is somewhere around 3 to 3.5, right, on a difficulty level, right? 3 to 3.5, neither too easy nor too difficult. The earlier passage that we did, that was a very simple passage. The fifth option here says the faculty displayed compassion but not empathy. As per the passage, displaying compassion involves taking an action that addresses the problem. Right? As per the last paragraph of the passage, compassion is displayed when someone undertakes an action that solves the problem. Here, the problem of the student is that the student is failing, right? And he wants his marks to be increased. So an action that will address his problem is that the teacher increases the marks. But the teacher has said, I cannot change your grades. So the teacher is not willing to take an action that will address the problem. So I cannot say that the faculty displayed compassion, right? Because compassion involves taking an action that will address the problem, right? That is why the fifth option is not correct. And again, fifth option says not empathy. But please note, the teacher is empathetic. The teacher says, I am sorry. That means that the teacher can imagine what the student is going through, right? And imagining what the other person is going through, that is defined as empathy in the passage, right? So option 5 is kind of exactly the opposite of what we require, right? Which is option 4. Okay, so on the whole, as I said, neither too easy nor too difficult. Now let's do an even more difficult passage. Right? I want you to try passage 2. Passage 3 and 4 we have done. Try passage 2. This is passage 2, right? The one on the screen right now. This is passage 2. It's kind of a lengthy passage, right? It's kind of a lengthy passage, which to a certain extent contributes to the difficulty level. And it's spread across 5 slides. And it is followed by a total of 6 questions. In these 6 questions, go for the best answer option. Even if you do not have a perfect answer, go for the most appropriate answer option. In a couple of questions, just make a minor change, right? In 2 questions, just make a slight change. In question 21, in option 1, replace the term neuroanalysis by this term. Dissociationism. Right? Please make some changes in this question. Option 1, replace the word neuroanalysis by dissociationism. In option 2, remove the word true. Right? In option 2, remove the word true. And in option 4, change the word basic to most important. Right? So please make these changes in question 21. Right? The changes are on the screen. Please make these changes in question 21. Right? 3 changes in question 21 to 3 of the options. Right? And in question 24, the term neuroanalysis to be changed to, again, the same term. Dissociationism. Right? That is the change to be made to the first option. Option 2 to be changed to analysis of illness, right? Not mental illness, illness. And option 3 to be changed to humans and animals. Right? So again, changes to 3 answer options. Right? Again, changes to be made to 3 answer options. Right? So questions 21 and 24, there are some changes to be made. Right? Please try this passage. It's a comparatively lengthy passage. It's kind of abstract unless you are interested in psychology, right, or psychiatry. It's kind of abstract, and there are 6 questions that follow. Right? Please give it a try. In question 24, 3 changes. In option 1, instead of neuroanalysis, dissociationism. In option 2, we are removing the word mental, and in option 3, we are changing it to humans and animals. Ritika, 19th is correct. Take around 5 6 minutes more. All of you will then discuss. Anubi, 19th answer is different. 20th is correct. Anubi, 19th is different. 20th is correct. Anubi, 22nd is also correct. Two more minutes, all of you. We'll then discuss. Ritika, 21, 22, both correct. Sambhav, 19th is correct. 20th is correct. 21 is a different answer. 22 is a different answer. 23 is correct. 24 is also correct. Good. So only 21 and 22 are different answers, Sambhav. Steffi, 19th is correct. 20th is a different answer. 22nd is correct. Anubi, 23rd is a different answer. Anubi, still a different answer for the 23rd question. Sambhav, 22nd correct. Okay, let's discuss. Right? Let's discuss. Let's come to the questions. Question 19, which of the following is true about Sigmund Freud according to the passage? The answer is option 3. Right? I guess most of you got this question correct. The answer is option 3. Freud's contributions to the development of psychoanalysis have been greatly appreciated by Clark Glymer. Right? Freud and psychoanalysis has been given on the first slide. Right? It says, but Freud should also be thought of as a philosopher and a deeply insightful and prescient one at that. As the philosopher of science, Clark Glymer observed. Right? So what Clark Glymer observed is in support of the fact that Freud should be thought of as a philosopher and a very good philosopher at that, which is where we are getting option 3 from. Options 1, 2, and 4. Right? Options 1, 2, and 4 have not at all been supported. Freud made use of ideas without acknowledging his predecessors. No reference. Current neurologists are evaluating the works of Sigmund Freud. No reference. Philosophers should re-examine Freud's place. Right? Absolutely no reference. Question 20, which one of the following, if true, most strongly supports the psychologist's interpretation of the study? Now, which study that they haven't mentioned very clearly over here. So essentially, we are looking for an answer option which should be true. The answer is option 4. In dispositionalist approach, the mind is distinct from the brain and only the brain processes behavior. Right? That is what happens in the dispositionalist approach. This is something that is given on the second last slide, where it talks about the dispositionalist approach. Right? And it says only the brain processes behavior. Right? And it says that the mind and behavior are, mind and brain are different. Right? It says mind is distinct from the physical brain. So option 4 is definitely correct. All the other 3 options are wrong because the passage does not discuss the concept of acceptance or rejection. Right? This has not been discussed. Acceptance and rejection. Right? Option 4 is factually correct as per the passage. Question 21, which of the following can be inferred about mental illness? The answer is option 1. Right? The answer is option 1. I guess there were very few of you who got this correct. Option 1 says the study of mental illness is a bewildering doctrine based on dissociationism and dispositionalist approach. Where am I getting this from? This is almost directly given on the second last slide. Look at this paragraph, first sentence. First sentence. Both of these theories, which are the 2 theories? One is dispositionalist approach. This is one theory. And the other theory is in the previous slide, dissociationism. So dissociationism and dispositionalist approach were harnessed to explain the puzzling phenomenon of mental illness. So instead of puzzling phenomenon, the term that they have used over here is bewildering doctrine. That is all. Right? Instead of puzzling, they have used bewildering. Instead of phenomenon, they have used doctrine. Right? But essentially, option 1 is saying the same thing. Option 2 says Freud believed that when we explain our behavior to ourselves or others, we rarely give an account of our motivation. Please note what Freud believed has not been discussed in the passage. Yes, Freud has been mentioned in the beginning with reference to psychoanalysis, but what he believed is not discussed. Option 3, tip of the iceberg, etc. Right? Not mentioned in the passage anywhere. Option 4, the dilemma of all human existence is that each element of psychic apparatus makes demands upon us. No dilemma of human existence is discussed. Right? Mental illness is discussed and option 1 is almost given directly. Right? Then question 22. Ostensibly means apparently. Right? Even without looking back at the passage. Right? Ostensibly is something that appears to be something. Right? Ostensibly means it appears to be. So if you have a look at where this is given in the passage, right? It's there on the third slide, I guess. Yeah. Some granted that ostensibly unconscious mental states. Right? So ostensibly means what appeared to be. right? So what appeared to be unconscious mental states were mental, but insisted they were not really unconscious. That is why we are saying what appeared to be. So what appeared to be unconscious was not really unconscious, right? So that is ostensibly, which means apparently, appears to be. The others have no connection with the word ostensibly. We have discussed this earlier. Whenever it comes to vocab and context questions, if an option cannot be the definition of a term, it cannot be the answer no matter how appropriate it seems. Lightly, beautifully, lively, these have got no relation to the word ostensibly. So even if they seem appropriate, they cannot be the answers. Right? Basic definition matters. Question 23, which of the following can be inferred from the last paragraph? The answer is question 20. I'm sorry, the answer is option 2. A mentally ill person's activities can be explained by his or her unconscious brain. Right? We are looking at the last paragraph. Right? Can be explained by his or her unconscious brain. In the last paragraph, this is implied. Here it says the fact that mentally ill people often engaged in compulsive behaviors that they could neither control nor understand could perhaps be explained by unconscious brain activity. Right? So it talks about unconscious brain activity. Right? So option 2 is correct. The other options, pineal lobe, I don't think is discussed anywhere. Option 3 says mentally ill person's activities are a result of only the dispositionalist nature. This is completely wrong. In one of the earlier questions, we have discussed that it is because of both the factors, disassociationism and dispositionalist. Option 4, they fail to differentiate real from apparent, not given. Right? Not given. And the last question, which of the following can be inferred about the author's intentions? The answer is option 1. Right? The answer is option 1. Analysis of mind and brain based on dispositionalist and dissociationism. Right? This is what the author wants to discuss. Right? This is what the author wants to discuss. Please note option 2, analysis based on Freudian psychoanalysis. Right? Freudian psychoanalysis has been mentioned. There is no analysis or discussion on it. Option 3 talks about psychological trauma, not discussed in the passage. Option 4 says analysis of human mind and human brain via Cartesian theory. Right? To a certain extent, this is okay, but somewhere in the passage it says that people have started moving beyond the Cartesian theory. See, I think on the second last or the third last slide, it's there. Here, the Cartesian concept of mind-body dualism came under increasing pressure. That means that there was some other concept that was come up with. Scientists of the mind responded to this challenge with 2 explanatory strategies. That means that they moved beyond the Cartesian concept. Those of you who got this last question correct, I would say that that's very good. Right? This was a difficult question. And those of you could mark option 1, that is good. On the whole, not considering the time taken to solve the passage, right? Most of you took a lot of time to solve the passage, but not considering that. If you got 4 out of 6 questions correct, I would say that is quite good. Even 3 out of 6 is not bad, but 4 out of 6 is quite good. 5 out of 6 is excellent, right? Notwithstanding the time taken, right? So disregarding the time aspect, right? 4 out of 6 is quite good. 5 out of 6 is excellent over here. So this constituted a difficult passage on psychology, right? The passage was kind of dense. It kind of discussed technical concepts of psychology, and the questions were also not very simple, right? So we started with simple passages, and then we have moved on to more complex passages in today's discussion of psychology based RCs, right? What we'll do is, with reference to reading comprehension, right, based on psychology, right, let's stop here, right? Because there is still one concept of grammar that we're left with to discuss. In this sheet, there is one more passage with reference to psychology. Somehow I'll just mention that, right? In this sheet, there is one more passage with reference to psychology, which we haven't discussed, which is the first passage, right? My suggestion is go through this passage, right? My suggestion is go through this passage, right? We are not discussing passage 1 right now, right? If you want, you can go through this passage. before this passage, right? Before this passage, there are some questions that are based on terms related to psychology, right? Some terms related to psychology, right? Just see if you can attempt these questions. I'll provide you with the answers, right? I'll provide you with these answers. Just see how best you can attempt the questions. Some of the ideal time to finish RC passage 2, I would say, is somewhere around 13 to 14 minutes as of this point in time. Right? As of this point in time, around 13 to 14 minutes, and maybe 3 months from now, around 10 to 11 minutes. Right? So 13 to 14 minutes, maximum 15 minutes, including answering all the questions. Right? So let's say 15 minutes at this point in time, and around 10 to 11 minutes 3 months from now. Right? That would be the ideal time to finish RC2, right? Because it was comparatively a lengthy passage, right? It was quite a lengthy passage. That is why the ideal time is slightly on the higher side. Okay. Now, let's come to the last major concept of grammar that we have not yet discussed, right? When I say grammar, I'm essentially talking about language, right? That we haven't yet discussed. That concept is the concept of conciseness. Right? That is the concept of conciseness. It's a simple concept, but this has been seen sometimes in questions. Right? It's not a very difficult concept, but sometimes this is missed. That is, while analyzing or recognizing the error in the sentence, this kind of gets missed. Right? So let's discuss this concept of conciseness. Right? I'll discuss it here. Conciseness. What the concept of conciseness states is that a sentence should be short and to the point. Right? The term concise basically means short. Right? So the concept of conciseness in grammar, that is with reference to language, it states that a sentence should be short and it should be to the point. So essentially what we are saying is no unnecessary words to be used. Right? No unnecessary words to be used. So if something can be communicated by using 9 words, we will not prefer an option that communicates the same aspect using 17 words. Right? So the shorter you can keep the sentence, the better it will be. Right? So no unnecessary words to be used. But at the same time, the meaning should be or should get conveyed clearly. Right? That is the concept of conciseness. So short, don't use unnecessary words, but it should be to the point. That means that the meaning should get conveyed clearly. Right? I'll give an example. Right? I'll give an example. Look at this sentence. The arrangement of books on the table was done in a very neat manner by the teacher. Right? The arrangement of books on the table was done in a very neat manner by the teacher. How many words does this have? This has 7, 10, 13, 14, 17 words. Right? 6, 7, 10, 13, 14, 17 words. Yeah, there are 17 words here. Now, compare it with the second sentence. The teacher arranged the books neatly on the table. The second sentence uses 9 words, right? The second sentence uses 9 words. Both the sentences convey exactly the same meaning, right? Both the sentences convey exactly the same meaning. The second sentence will always be preferred over the first sentence, right? Why? Because the second sentence is short and it is to the point. So the meaning that the first sentence was communicating using 17 words is exactly the same meaning that the second sentence communicates, right? Which is why the second option is much better. Sometimes in grammar questions, you are faced with answer options that are both correct, that both convey the same meaning. In that case, prefer the option that uses fewer words, right? The second sentence is definitely better than the first sentence because it is short and it does not miss out on the meaning in any manner, right? It conveys exactly the same meaning, right? So this is what the concept of conciseness is. Now, with reference to conciseness, right? With reference to conciseness, there are two aspects that you have to take care of. That is, there are primarily two reasons, right? I'll write it here. There are primarily two reasons because of which a sentence could be wordy, right? Wordy or verbose. What I mean by wordy or verbose is non-concise, right? There are primarily two reasons that result in non-conciseness, right? There are two reasons. Let's discuss both of them, right? Let's discuss both of them. The first is the use of the passive voice, right? This is one major contributor towards a sentence becoming non-concise, right? Use of the passive voice, right? This is a cause for non-conciseness, right? So this is what creates the problem in quite a few sentences. See, I'll give you a simple example. If I say, Rahul plays cricket, tell me which voice is this? Is this active voice or passive voice? Rahul plays cricket. Is this active voice or passive voice? Which voice is this? Active or passive? Anyone? Sambhav, correct. This is the active voice, right? This is the active voice. See, definition of active voice is very simple. In active voice, the subject does the action, right? That is the definition of the active voice. What is the subject of the sentence? The subject of the sentence is Rahul. So Rahul is doing the action of playing. So because subject does the action, because of the word action, this is known as active voice. And the passive voice is cricket is played by Rahul, right? Cricket is played by Rahul. This is passive voice. Why this is passive voice is because here the subject does not do the action. So if the subject does not do the action, that means that the subject is passive, right? Passive means not reacting, not doing something, right? So the subject in this sentence is cricket. Cricket is not doing the action. The action is still done by Rahul, but Rahul is the object of the sentence, right? So that's the definition of active and passive voice. You will notice that the passive voice is wordier than the active voice, right? The passive voice is wordier than the active voice. Anubi, correct. In the passive voice, the subject receives the action. It suffers the action. Passive voice is using 5 words. Active voice is using 3 words. So the use of the passive voice is making the sentence wordier or verbose. Whereas active voice, the sentence in the active voice is the one which is concise. Right? The sentence in the active voice is the one which is concise. So in most of the cases, it is the use of the passive voice that creates a problem with conciseness. Right? In fact, if you see to some extent, right, to some extent, in our earlier example, right, in some extent, in our earlier example, the concise sentence, the better sentence, the teacher arranged the books neatly on the table, right? This is the active voice, right? This is the active voice. So a sentence in the active voice is more concise, right? In most of the cases, there are very few exceptions, but in most of the cases, the sentences in the active voice is more concise. So the use of the passive voice is something that results in a wordy or verbose sentence, right? So avoid the use of the passive voice. I'm not saying that passive voice is grammatically wrong. There's nothing grammatically wrong with passive voice. In fact, even in the previous case, both the sentences are grammatically correct, right? But the second sentence, which is in the active voice, that is more concise, right? That is more concise. The second sentence, which is in the active voice, but the first sentence is not grammatically wrong, and grammatically it's correct, right? But we are going for what is better. Okay. So this is the first reason, the use of the passive voice. The second reason, right? The second reason is the concept of redundancy, right? The second reason is the concept of redundancy, right? I'll give you a simple example, right? I'll give you a simple example. The reason why the candidate was not chosen in the interview is because he was rude. Tell me, there is this sentence going wrong. There is something wrong with this sentence. Where is this sentence going wrong? There is something majorly wrong with this sentence. What is that? Anubi, you are right, but something more specific. Steffi, correct. Ritika, correct. Right? Steffi and Ritika, correct. That if you have a look at the words that are used, the terms reason and why, these two terms mean the same thing. Right? These two terms mean the same thing. In fact, there is a problem with yet another word in the sentence, and that problem is with the word because. These three terms, reason, why, and because, these three terms imply the same thing. In fact, you can write this same sentence by using just one of these three terms. Right? You can reframe the sentence by using just one of these three terms. For example, look at this. The candidate was not chosen in the interview because he was rude. this sentence uses just one word because I don't require the words reason and why. Right? The words reason and why are both not required. Or I can say the reason the candidate was not chosen in the interview is that he was rude. Just note, I have used only one of the words. I have not used the other two words. So there are three words given, out of which only one is important. The other two words are redundant. Right? So in case of redundancy, what happens is certain terms do not add any meaning to the sentence. Right? So in my original sentence, there is no point of using three terms, reason, why, and because, when I can write the same sentence by using only one term. Right? So there are at least two terms that do not add any meaning to the sentence. Do not use such terms. Right? Do not use such terms. So redundancy is another major reason for non-conciseness. Right? The first sentence was non-concise because of redundancy in the sentence. Right? Because of redundancy in the sentence. There are quite a few terms that we use on a regular basis, especially in spoken English. Right? There are quite a few terms that we use in which certain words are redundant. Right? I'll give you some examples. Right? I'll give you some examples. And there are quite a few terms that are commonly used in spoken English where there is redundancy. I say something like, please return it back to me. And if I say something like, please return it back to me, please note the word back is redundant. Right? The word back is redundant. There is no such thing as return back. Return by itself means back. Right? The term return and back cannot be used together. Either I say, please return it to me, or I say, please give it back to me. But I cannot use the terms return and back in the same sentence. Right? I'll give you a lot of other terms also. Right? I'll just give you the terms directly without mentioning the sentences. Right? Look at this term. Unexpected surprise. It makes no sense. Surprise by definition is unexpected. If something is expected, it cannot be a surprise. Right? Then I say something like merge together. Merging has to be together. Repeat again. Right? Repeat automatically means again. Quite a few of us use the term free gift. Just try to think about it. A gift by definition is something that is free. If something is not free, then it's not a gift. So there's no such thing as a free gift. End result. Result by definition is something that comes at the end, right? Yes, there can be something as final result, right? If it was a multi-stage process, right? If it's a multi-stage process, there can be a final result, right? But there's no such thing as an end result. New innovation, right? The term new. Another term that quite a few of us use is completely finished. What does completely finished mean? Either something is finished or it's not finished. Right? There's no such thing as completely finished. Partially finished, I agree, it makes sense. Right? But finished is finished. Right? There's no point in using the term completely over there. Right? These are all examples of redundancy. Right? These are all examples of redundancy. Look at this term. Deliberated thoughtfully. Deliberated thoughtfully. Deliberation is something that is done thoughtfully. Without giving it thought, it cannot be deliberated. A term like something still remains. Remains means it is still there. Actual fact, right? The term actual. If I say something like 3 p.m. in the afternoon, 3 p.m. has to be in the afternoon. It cannot be any time else. Past history, the term past. Consensus of opinion, right? Consensus has to be of opinion. What else can it be of? In fact, there's a very common phrase that is used by a lot of people. The phrase personal opinion. If someone has an opinion, that has to be personal. It cannot be anything else. Right? So there's no such thing as a personal opinion. Right? Because there's no such thing as a non-personal opinion. So whatever opinion is there, that is a personal opinion. So all of these are examples of redundancy. Right? Please be very careful with such terms. I repeat, these terms are not making the sentence grammatically wrong. Right? They're not making the sentence grammatically wrong, but they're not adding any value. Right? So the sentence becomes less appropriate. Right? The sentence becomes less appropriate. It could even be something like this. Look at this. Look at this sentence. During the session, we came up with a total of 10 ideas. During the session, we came up with a total of 10 ideas. This phrase, a total of, it does not add any value to the sentence. Simply say we came up with 10 ideas. A total of 10 ideas, it adds no value to the sentence. Right? So this is again redundancy. So redundancy is again something that leads to non-conciseness. So in the exam, in case you have a grammar question where two options are both grammatically correct, both of them mean exactly the same thing and there is no other difference, right? In that case, go for the sentence that is more concise, right? Go for the sentence that is more concise. So this is the concept of conciseness, right? And with reference to conciseness, you need to keep in mind the aspect of passive voice and the aspect of redundancy, right? Those are the two aspects that you need to keep in mind. So what we'll do is let's end the session here, right? So essentially this session was about reading comprehension passages based on the theme of psychology, right? But this concept of conciseness is something additional that we have discussed because this is also important, right? When it comes to grammar questions, right? I'll send across the answers. Please try those questions in the sheet that I was talking about, right? Where you have to come up with a word related to the phrase that has been given, right? I'll send across the answers. Thanks a lot. Thanks.